Helpful Harry by Kerri Lane, illustrated by Kieran Morris. Not many people smiled when they called Harry by his nickname, Helpful Harry. People had given Harry the nickname because he was always asking whether he could help. Except by the time he'd finished helping, they were no longer smiling, they were frowning. The trouble was, Harry thought he really did try to be helpful, but sometimes his help seemed to make things worse. Maybe it was his fault that his grandma's new hairstyle looked like a mohawk. He was only trying to help her keep her gardening hat on. She said it was always blowing off. How was he to know that a little bit of glue around the inside edge of her hat would stick to her hair forever? He didn't think it was all his fault that she'd had to have all her hair cut off, except for one frizzy strip down the center. After that incident, Harry promised never to be helpful again, and he wasn't, until the night he overheard his mom and dad talking. Harry was lying in bed thinking about the big fair that was coming up. He loved the fair. He loved the rides and the cotton candy, but most of all, he loved watching the animal parade. "I'm a bit worried about the hens," Dad had said. "The red ones don't seem to have quite enough red in their feathers." Harry couldn't help himself. He wanted to help. He even knew what to do. All he had to do was get the right ingredients. The next morning, when his dad was working at the other end of the farm, Harry crept into the chicken coop. He just started laying out his special equipment when the door opened. "What are you doing?" Dropping his things, Harry jumped to his feet. "Oh, it's only you. You scared the life out of me. I thought I was going to get caught." Angus, Abby, and Lochi parked their bikes against the wall outside. "Why are you scared of getting caught?" asked Abby. "What are you doing?" Harry tried to block her view. "Nothing." Abby stretched to peek over his shoulder. "Yes, you are." "It's nothing. It's a secret." This was one time Harry didn't need his friends around. "What kind of secret?" Lochi asked, picking up a part of Harry's chemistry set. Harry tried to grab it, but at the same time, Abby darted past him. "Why are your hens drinking this blue stuff?" Harry spun back around so fast he nearly tripped. "Blue? Oh no, not blue!" "I like blue drinks sometimes," said Angus. "Blue is okay." Harry shook his head. "Not this time. Blue is bad. Very bad. Quick, chickens, shoo, shoo." Lochi, Abby, and Angus began chasing the hens away from the blue drink, but it was no use. The hens kept darting between their legs. "Quick, Lochi, take that stuff outside," yelled Angus. As soon as Lochi left the coop, the hens became quieter. But Harry didn't, because before his very eyes, his father's prize chickens were starting to turn blue. Angus and Abby said nothing. They just stared, unable to believe their eyes. Lochi couldn't believe his eyes either when he returned. Harry flopped down onto the floor. "I was trying to help Dad," he said. "They were supposed to turn red. I found this old science experiment. It said if you mixed this stuff properly and drank lots of it, you'd turn that color. I mixed up a few colors until I got the red right, but I must have knocked over the blue dye into that bucket when they came in." Both boys apologized, but Abby just folded her arms. "Does this stuff hurt the chickens?" she asked. "No, it wears off in a couple of weeks." "So what's your problem?" "My problem is that the fair is tomorrow. Dad is going to be really mad at me," Harry said. Abby frowned. "Why can't we just give them some red drink now?" Harry looked hopeful. Do you think it would work? The boys shrugged their shoulders. It took no time to fill up the buckets with the special red drink. It's working. They're changing to... Harry's voice dropped. To purple, said Angus. Purple, Harry whined. Oh no, Dad's best hens are purple. All eyes turned to Abby. Oops, she said. I forgot that blue and red make purple. Harry snatched up the bottle of dye he'd made. There was only yellow left. Get these bottles out of here. I'll put them in those buckets, Lochi said. He headed for the door. Just take them as far away from this chicken coop as you can, Angus said. At least your dad has still got Blossom, the Jersey cow, and Simon the goat. Maybe they'll win, Abby said. The other three were still trying to come up with a plan when Lochi burst back through the door. We might have another problem, he said. Harry rolled his eyes. I don't think I want to know about it. When I went out to get the buckets of blue drink, one was empty, Lochi said. What? The other three shouted as they ran out the door. Look, gasped Abby. I hope your dad isn't too upset about only entering Blossom, because I don't think a blue Angora goat is going to win. Oh no, Harry slumped against the coop. Not Simon too. Angus turned to Lochi. I hope you got rid of that other bucket. Lochi nodded. Yep, I put it at the end of that empty field. Harry looked alarmed. Blossom's field? Yeah, but she wasn't there, said Lochi. Are you sure? Harry asked. Sometimes she hides behind that big tree. All four friends suddenly stopped and looked at each other. Quick, run, Harry shouted. I'm sure it's okay, Lochi said. I put the yellow and the blue in one bucket, but I guess that could make... Green, they all said together. There was Blossom, as bright and happy as could be, and very, very green. Harry dropped his head into his hands. I am in deep trouble now. Abby reached over to pat Blossom. Actually, there might be a way out of this, she said. When she had finished, Harry looked at her with his mouth wide open. You think we should paint all the animals back to their right colors? If we use water-based paints, they won't hurt the animals, Abby said. The paint will just wash off like it does off us, like face painting, kind of. Lochi roared with laughter. Where would we get enough water-based paint to do a whole cow? We'd need heaps of it. Abby didn't even blink. My aunt is an art teacher. She's got huge buckets of this powder stuff at home. And off she went to get her aunt's paints. I can still just make out Blossom's markings. It'll be like using a stencil, Abby said as they struggled into the field with the paint. She and Angus grabbed big brushes and started to paint Blossom brown and white. The black and white goat didn't prove to be too much of a problem for Lochi, but the chickens were a different matter. Harry had to spray paint them. It was hard work, but soon it was all done. Now they just had to keep all the animals away from Harry's dad and any water. They'd just closed the coop's door when Harry's dad, Mr. O'Neill, rumbled along on his old tractor. Hi, kids, he called. Ready for the fair tomorrow? As ready as we'll ever be, mumbled Harry. Mr. O'Neill jumped down from the tractor. I just want to check on the animals. We've done it, said Harry. Mr. O'Neill frowned. There's a lot to do. I want to brush down Blossom and Simon and... We've done that, said Harry. I want to polish their horns and hooves. Done, said Angus. I want to feed them and settle them in for the night. Done, said Abby and Lochi. Well, what about the chickens? They're all ready. Mr. O'Neill looked surprised. Well, you kids sure seem to have done a lot of work. It took a lot to convince Mr. O'Neill that everything had been done. When Mr. O'Neill insisted that he check on Blossom, they all took deep breaths, especially when he said he thought Blossom looked a little different. "We washed her," Angus said quickly. At the fair, Harry again insisted on taking care of the animals. It wasn't a very big fair, so all the animals were in one huge barn. Still, Harry was getting very tired running from one animal to the next, which is why he made one big mistake. The judges were making their rounds. Suddenly, Harry noticed that Blossom's water bucket was empty. She must have been thirsty and drunk all her water. Grabbing her bucket, he raced to the end of the barn. Just as his hand turned the tap, he heard a voice behind him. "And the winner is—" Harry turned quickly to look over his shoulder when suddenly, it's raining. Oh, I'm getting drenched." Immediately, Harry turned back and saw that he'd grabbed the wrong knob. He turned the fire sprinkler system on. He turned it off and stood wide-eyed as the paint on the animals started to run. "The cow is green. Ooh, and those hens are purple. That goat is blue." Of all the surprised faces, he saw one face very clearly. "Helpful, Harry?" Harry gulped. "Sorry, Dad. I was just trying to help." For several minutes, Harry waited silently while the judges had another talk. The first prizes were awarded, and Harry's dad didn't win any. But then the judge cleared his throat. "This year, we have decided to award a special prize to the animals who were presented in the most original manner. This prize goes to the very colorful animals from the O'Neill farm." Harry watched his dad's face break into a big grin. He went to accept the award. When Mr. O'Neill came back, he shook his head at Harry. "I'm sorry, Dad. You missed out on first prize because of me." Mr. O'Neill ruffled Harry's hair. "No, I didn't, Harry. I knew the competition was strong this year. The best animals won. Everything else we'll talk about later." Then his dad said, "I hope this stuff wears off." Harry nodded. "And do me a favor. Keep it away from Grandma. The mohawk is bad enough. I don't think I could cope if she turned purple too."